No, it's Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous podcast with the guys from IA Wrestle.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IA Wrestle. Time to strap it up and get to the show.
Welcome back to Potentially Dangerous. I'm your host today, Ross Bartachek, and joining me is a very special guest from Ames, Iowa. We got assistant coach Brent Metcalf on. Brent, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so obviously, you're kind of in the middle of a big rebuild there in Iowa State. Actually, most people after last season would kind of consider maybe like that rebuild is over. You're kind of transitioning into a new phase, so it's a real exciting time in Ames. So the school year's like just getting underway. So tell us a little bit about what you did over the summer and what's been changing and cracking at Iowa State.
Yeah, it is an exciting time of year for us. Obviously, last year was really great progress with the team. I think the exciting thing that we have moving forward is that our team was young, so a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores. So kind of looking forward to kind of see where those guys end up. We only had one senior, and then obviously David Carr just won a world title and getting him in the lineup and seeing how that progresses. So from our point of view, there's still a lot of, I don't know if uncertainty is the word, but kind of just some excitement for, how much farther this team has grown even from where we were last year. And that was what we did a lot of the summer. We sent a number of guys to do freestyle, but the vast majority of our team we kept around here to train, work on specific areas that we kind of felt were major make or break things for the team. So.
And you mentioned David Carr and obviously his big accomplishment this summer. So I know we kind of talked a little bit last year about how important it was just to kind of put Austin Gomez on the junior team. I know he didn't get to compete for injury, but so last year it was a pretty big deal to put a guy on a junior team. This year you guys had a junior world champ. So, I mean, how big is that for Iowa State to kind of have that kind of success?
It's great, obviously. I mean, anytime you have any of your guys, winning at that level, it's unbelievably important. But then in addition to that, when you're trying to grow something, you're trying to rebuild something, if that's the right word, it's really great to have examples that you can point at early, right? So you mentioned Gomez. So last year, Gomez was a guy where what he was doing in the room was a great example, and we could point to that. Then he has success, and it helps that team maybe go that way, and I think Carr's another example of that, of a guy who does it right in the room every day, does his lifestyle right, really great kid that, again, for another year, as we continue to grow this thing, as we continue to try to get it where we want it, is a great example. So, obviously put aside his wrestling ability, just as a great example of the way he trains and the way he lives his life, and then he goes on and does that. And it's a lot easier to get a team around that idea when you have examples of it in your room. So,
and while we're on the discussion of freestyle, obviously, the Cyclone RTC plays a pretty big role in, getting partners and helping David, go on to win that world title. You yourself was an RTC athlete. I think when you were brought on at Iowa State, you had a role within the Cyclone RTC. That was like kind of one of your original main things. So there's been a lot of discussion, obviously, about the RTCs.
Yeah.
Do you kind of have any thoughts about, how you view that impacting your team and just your overall sense of what RTCs mean for college wrestling?
I'm going to try not to commit myself too much there because it's basically an ongoing discussion right now. I would say the things that I love about RTCs and that I believe are going to always be there are the opportunities for postgraduates to stay around after they graduate in college and have a place that they can pursue their dreams, right? And that's also, there's money that helps them to be able to live while they're doing that, right? And that's something I think across the board, everyone supports. I support it. To me, it was a game changer for our sport because it kept guys around more. It was a game changer for USA in general. I think that you could see if you look back between our development programs and then RTCs, the immediate success that we started to have internationally. So I think that those are things that need to stay in place with the RTCs. The things that, and again, I'm gonna kind of let the chips fall, but probably at the other end of the spectrum. So your prospects, right? The prospects have been really intermingled in the things that the RTCs, I think, and this isn't illegal because, it's really a platform that you're allowed to do a lot of things that in any other sport would be very unacceptable. And I'm talking about recruiting. I'm talking about, things like that. So, the point that I see, or what I'm kind of outside looking in, is that's something that needs to be tweaked or fixed. I see, and I hope that I see no threat in the ability of postgraduates, being able to train at these universities and have support and continue to be able to, pursue their dreams after college,
Right. And I think you make really good points, and obviously you even come from a perspective you served on USA Wrestling staff there for a little bit before you went to Iowa State, so you kind of have that really unique perspective of you've been a part of USA Wrestling, you were an RTC athlete, and now you're kind of in the coaching on the other side of it now. So, and I think you're right on with that. How we, you kind of saw our trajectory. You nailed it with the development, but even on the senior level, obviously we won a world title as a team, which is a pretty big deal. So. That's kind of where I was going with that, and I think you're right that it's probably not fair to do apples to apples or apples to oranges comparison of like, what a RTC would mean for a football sport, basketball sport versus wrestling when you factor in the Olympic aspect. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that this is basically the RTC model is basically wrestling's professional avenue, right? So I think that I don't think anyone's trying to get rid of that. I think that we're trying to really focus in on your high school age kids, your prospective student athletes, and how we can make sure that we're doing that correctly, and that we're not letting ourselves get too far extended. Maybe if that's the right word, where we're going to be in a big mess here in a few years. So
that's right, sure. So let's get back to the Iowa State team. Obviously, there's a lot of things to be excited about. You guys have kind of done a little bit of a staff reshuffling. You've moved Ben Durbin, who was volunteer assistant there at the end of the last season. He's now strength and conditioning coach. And your one senior from last year has been brought on for a grad assistant. So kind of talk a little bit, if you could, about those new roles for those two guys.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about building a team, and that's something that we're doing from our team level, I think that at least from Coach Dresser's point of view, is kind of molding and putting together his staff kind of how he wants it. So that's where you got Ben, a guy that we found to be very, very valuable. He actually started in our RTC. He was an RTC guy when we first got here, and he ended up being very valuable to us, and we wanted to kind of keep him around and keep him in the circle, and that's kind of how that all turned out. We just brought on Jesse Delgado into our RTC as well. So that, again, in the same way that we're building our team, I think that Coach Dresser's, just piecing together a staff that's filling all of our needs and et cetera.
And then the other big news, just from the program, like high-level view, you guys released your schedule last week. Were there any things that stuck out to you that you were really excited that, are on this year's schedule from your perspective?
Obviously we've got a lot of great home dates, but you can't ignore the fact that we have Iowa, Oklahoma State, and UNI at home this year. We've got other great duels, but as far as like attendance and get people really excited about coming to watch a dual meet, I think that those are three big dates for us. To really get our fan base, and obviously when we're wrestling Iowa, it's going to be the entire darn state, really excited about coming and watching the dual meet. So I'm excited about that. We've got a lot of opportunities this year to put our guys against some really, really high-level competition to the different, we're going to do Vegas and the Scuffle. So we've got a lot of options, and it's good. It's a competitive schedule, and it's one that I'm excited about.
Obviously, Harold Nichols Open is what you guys usually kick your season off, pretty much every year. Do you guys have any ideas on any teams that are coming to that yet?
No, it's typically like any other open tournament where you're going to kind of have the neighboring states and their colleges come, some smaller schools. Really, for us, it's just a good kickoff for our guys. Sometimes, depending on how different weights fall out, sometimes you kind of use it as a wrestle off if you got you don't know what to do with weights and things. So just all around, it's good for our guys just to get some first matches in. And then, obviously, if we need head-to-head stuff, those usually occur at that tournament too. So.
And then from the perspective of, you said you're going to Cliff Keen, you're going to Southern Scuffle. Now, as an athlete, you didn't get Iowa always went to the Midlands, so that's kind of where you got to see a lot of your experience growing up. Now that you get to coach there, I mean, what's kind of been your experience of going to those tournaments now, and are those events that you would have wished you could have had an opportunity to maybe compete at?
I don't know if I'd look back and say, man, I wish I would have had this opportunity, because as far as I was concerned, when I wrestled, however it fell out, I had the ability to wrestle all of the best guys in my weight class throughout the year, So he never showed up at the national tournament and had like a surprise guy, But the format's very different now, as far as the way that you qualify your spot to the national tournament. Basically, each individual is trying to qualify themselves within their conference. So that's where I think it's really big that we go and we get to compete, like in Vegas, for instance, where you're going to have the opportunity to beat some really highly ranked guys, right? And just the way that the system works, if you can do that, you're kind of setting yourself up better for the end of the year, right? So it's kind of a balancing game, and I think a lot of coaches are starting to understand that too, as far as balancing out your wins, balancing out getting good quality wins, making sure you have enough matches against D1 guys. It's a totally different system than what I would say than what I went through.
Sure. So the school year's getting started now. So that means, and I know most freshmen move on to campus well before school starts, but from an IA wrestle perspective, we've been covering guys like Aiden Reeves and Julian Broderson for a long time, and I know they were pretty big pieces to your 2019 recruiting class. So can you kind of talk a little bit about those freshmen getting onto campus and what you've seen from those two guys specifically in the early going?
Well, actually, both of those guys are kind of dinged up right now. So Reeves is kind of coming off of something that happened over the summer. He's it was part of last year, right? So he's coming off of that. So he's probably like a week out of being able to get on the mat. So I'm excited to see that, because obviously, we had him in our RTCs and things, but before he committed, and I'm excited to get him on the mat. I know he's an unbelievable kid. His energy and his passion, it's been like putting chains on the guy and locking him up against the wall just to keep him off the mat, So I'm excited about him. And then Broderson, I think that he's what's the right word? We're kind of making sure that he's good to go, and then we're going to kind of cut them guys loose. So good to have him on campus, but those are two guys actually in particular that didn't go through the summer training phase like some of the other freshmen did,
I suppose, yeah. I forgot about the injury with Reeves was obviously one, and then Broderson was big baseball player there for Davenport. So then just kind of looking forward to your lineup. You've already hit that you have a lot of guys returning, but I think there's also some more quality competition rising up from. I'm thinking of like Todd Small, maybe making a push, or obviously then you got a couple guys coming off red shirt. So starting with those lower weights, what are you thinking early in the season? Are there any battles you think, or is there going to be a lot of same lineup from last year?
You never know. Everyone's got to earn their spot. I would say that it's probably going to be pretty similar. I think, like you had mentioned, the big change from last year is that we are starting to get more depth in those weight classes, so they are going to become more competitive, and that's where you put it on the challenger a little bit too, and you talk about Todd Small, right? So he'll be 141, Is he ready to push Ian Parker, right? And then obviously we want a scenario where both of those guys are battling for the spot because they're going to both make each other better. And then whoever goes and represents us at 141 is really going to be in a great position to do some great things for the year, you know. So that's a great positive of it. I'd just quick glance, I'd say it's probably going to be similar. I don't think that there's any major movements. Obviously 165, Straw will be going up. Chase Straw will be going up there, but there's a whole bunch of guys that are going to kind of be battling for that spot. So,
and then so you kind of mentioned that there, David Carr probably. I think he said on Takedown Radio maybe even that he was coming in at 157. So obviously, a lot of big things are probably expected from him. What have you seen? He's obviously a huge name recruit, which doesn't necessarily mean everything, but he's got that legacy where there's a lot of buzz surrounding him, and you were a pretty big recruit yourself, so I'm sure you kind of got that similar feeling. You know what he's going through. So what have you felt when you've kind of been able to scrap with him, and what do you think you see in him?
Well, the kid's unbelievably tough, I can tell you that much. So that's what I've felt from him. But I think to go back to where we started the interview, I think the biggest thing is he's a really, really good kid. Really, really good kid. Really from a really, really great family, right? And they raised him the right way. And I think that's his biggest asset is he comes in every day with a smile on his face. He's excited to be there. He loves what he's doing. And then that translates on the mat. I mean, obviously his wrestling ability is sky high, but if you're miserable and you have that ability, it doesn't necessarily equate a lot of times, right? So we got a kid that's really motivated, a really great teammate. Really, I can't really say much more about it other than he's a great kid and he can wrestle. Kid can wrestle. He can score takedowns whenever he chooses. Really, so excited to see. Again, this will be his first year at it, and I know he's excited, and we're excited to get him out there.
And looking further up the lineup at 197, you guys got to replace Willie Nichols. Are there some early names that are kind of maybe taking a front runner position?
Yeah, we'll have Francis Dugan and Joel Shapiro. Both obviously Dugan was a Pennsylvania kid, but he's an Iowa kid unofficially. So those two will be kind of battling that. That'll probably be one of the spots where you really at this point couldn't even guess. We'll just have to see which guy ends up being the guy. It's because neither one of those guys really have history in the lineup or anything like that. So yeah, so that's 197 there for you.
All right, and for those following the IA Wrestle site, they know we've kind of been hitting on the 10-year anniversary of the Iowa Hawkeyes National Championship. You were a part of that team. So kind of looking back, do you kind of remember, heading into the season, what the feeling was like? I know in 2009 you guys kind of, you just nudged by Ohio State to win the title. So coming into the 2010 season, what was the feeling like coming in?
Well, shoot, that's a lot of years ago. I do remember, I don't know, I was a crazy son of a gun back then. I think that, I don't know if there was nervousness. I think that there was a lot of confidence. I believe that did we end up with 5 guys in the finals that year?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and I think that I kind of knew we had that horsepower, and I knew it because of, obviously you're training with these guys every single day in the room. So their ability, and maybe you're coming back excited because to me in 2009 was a little bit of a letdown from our point of view. We won, but I think that we, in theory could have won by a lot more, So I think that maybe that was kind of where we were going for. Hey, we want to kind of knock this thing out of the park this year,
Yeah, and, I think that's kind of, from my fans' perspective, I feel like that's where I was at, same position where it felt like a lot of confidence. You kind of knew everybody's upside, and it was just all a matter of fact of you guys just going out there and taking care of business, which you guys really did by the end of the year. And a lot of the guys on that team are still very involved with wrestling today. Obviously you were a very senior class, so you guys were all that same grade. Do you still keep a good rapport with a lot of your old teammates then, or how close knit was that team?
It was a very, very close-knit team, and so you had kind of two combinations, right? So that class was also the Virginia Tech class too, right? So we had the 5 guys that transferred from Virginia Tech in there, mixed with the Iowa guys, and we actually that group meshed really, really well. So I would say probably still closest knit guys are the guys that I was at Virginia Tech with, and then I don't know. I think it was really unique. I mean, obviously, when you're winning, it's a lot of fun. But it was one of those things where we all kind of lived together. We all every single day, as far as a lot of those starters, every single day we were with each other. So yeah, I would say just about every one of those guys that were at least the major players are people that I still stay in really great touch with and good friends with.
So then, then taking it forward to a step forward to looking at you guys, you go out there, you put 5 in the finals. I'm pretty sure 3 of you guys won. McDonough, yourself and Jay Borschel all won. So you hit your goal. Everybody performed, pretty much to their maximum potential given their circumstances. So you got that feeling of going out on a high note. Now that you've reached that pinnacle as an athlete and you're in the coaching, how do you translate that into your athletes and tell them and get them to a point where your team's contending for a title? Do you see any building blocks of what your team was and trying to incorporate that into your team as a coach, I guess?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I guess one thing looking back at that team, and maybe if you want to try to replicate something like that, right, is to have the great leaders. That's one thing that I really thought was huge, in that we had some really great guys on the team, and it was one of those things where we were feeding off of each other, right? So everybody respected each other. Everyone really enjoyed being around each other. So when one guy went out on the mat, and whatever it was, let's say Morningstar went out, right? He went out and if he won by 6, right? Well, the next guy out, it was a competition, a friendly one, a little bit. Well, hey, you didn't get the major, man. I'm going to get the major, right? And so we were kind of feeding off each other that way. And I don't know how to explain it other than it was really fun, because it was, everyone was just trying to one up each other as far as, hey, who could go out and have a more dominating performance individually, right? And I'm just talking about dual meets right now, right? And to me, I think it helped us grow a lot. I mean, I think of a guy like Phil Keddy, he was up there as an elite level guy. And I don't know on a high school if he was that elite level guy, but I felt just being with us, and I'm really, really great friends with him, that he became such a better wrestler because he was surrounded by guys that were at a high level. So he had to either be at that level or get out, and he answered the call, So I think there's a lot of examples like that, and that's kind of what it felt like at the time, going through it was wow, every one of these guys. And if let's say for one day I wanted to take a day off, they wouldn't let me forget it, because they were working the same level that I was, So it was really fun. So as a coach, I think I saw, I've seen that experience, and I think you want to try to create that. You want to try to motivate your athletes to be leaders, your athletes to get their arms around it. And obviously some of the guys that are doing it, right, to get their arms around their teammates and say, hey, let's do this together. Let's all of us together. Let's make this our team, and let's see how tough we can get. Let's see how bad we can beat the next team, right? Let's do that together. And I think that's powerful, right? Obviously, a coach can say a lot, a coach can motivate a team, but when it's coming from the athletes, I think that's a really, really powerful thing.
I would say, given your comments, from what we're viewing from the outsider perspective, I think, whether you know this or not, I think you guys are probably, you're getting that job done in Ames. I think we've seen, like I said, from the fans' perspective, we're seeing a lot of your guys buy in. We're seeing a different mentality out on the mat. Guys are hungry, guys are going for it. And that, you can tell even in that, I know you guys came away with a loss in the Iowa duel last year, but you could tell there was a little bit of that feeding off of each other, specifically from that duel. So I think you guys are starting to build on that. So you guys are moving in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. And now, you still got another month. Practice begins usually first week of October, right?
October 10. Yep.
Okay. So, what does your life look like from now up until the season actually, quote unquote, begins?
So right now, coming off of a ton of recruiting, obviously, basically this entire month of August was recruiting and being kind of all over the place. We've got a lot of holes to fill that will be holes, I guess, soon when these guys all come through and graduate. So a lot of recruiting there, and then obviously just getting these guys ready to go with just preseason stuff, running and limited on the mat stuff. A lot of that's going to be optional sort of stuff. So, between now and then is just get ducks in a row with the team, and then obviously our we have a lot of recruiting weekends and things like that. So, kind of that's always the cycle it is, right? So you're this time of year is going to be your preseason stuff and recruiting, right? And then the recruiting kind of starts to slow down, and then your actual job, I call it, your actual job, which is being a wrestling coach, kind of starts up.
When do official visits start being able to? Isn't there?
Typically, once football games start going, official visits start going. So these juniors can officially, as long as school has started, they can take visits.
Gotcha. So is there a weekend in mind, or are you guys still kind of trying to figure out when?
We've got guys coming this weekend. The Iowa weekend is a big weekend for us, and then I think we're doing Oklahoma State. That football game is going to be another weekend, and then we may have one. We've got we're wrestling Bucknell, and I think it's Texas on the same weekend. So Texas football, and then we wrestle Bucknell. And that's going to be maybe a later date that we'll hold out for some guys we want to bring in, and that'll be cool where they can see football and wrestling together. So
perfect. Well, you're always working, and I mean there's no shortage of tasks and jobs that the assistant coach for a wrestling program holds. That's for sure. So. We do want to wish you the best of luck. We're really looking forward to seeing what your program can do this year. Obviously, we'll be covering you guys extensively. So, best of luck, Coach.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.